All right. Welcome, everyone, once again to another episode of Curious Success. This is where we are at with our Black Women Credibility, part two of episode 19. Um, Thank you all once again for joining. I look forward to having a good and great discussion from various aspects. And if y'all want to just briefly introduce yourselves then, so we could just quickly go around. Once we've done that, we can actually get started in our discussion topics or points for the day. So whoever would like to go first, feel free to just briefly introduce yourself again.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Tashanta Snyder, and I am the CEO and founder of Ayana Productions and the creator of the Media Alert series. Nice.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joy Osahan. I am a social support manager for a nonprofit organization, as well as an author, blogger, and speaker.
My name is Sherrice and I am a senior patent paralegal for an international law firm.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Xiomara, and I currently work for a railroad, and that's all. That's it about me.
Okay. Do one of you have a TV on in the background?
Me?
No, I'm just asking. I hear some background noise.
Oh, that's your brother. I'll close my door.
Well, that man get up out of here, yo. Anyway.
No, he's in the living room. That's how big his mouth is.
Yeah, he's loud. Anyway. So, I think one of the things that I still feel like I haven't received like a good definition of, and I think y'all could probably speak a little bit more to it, is what is Black girl magic, and do you believe it properly represents you?
Can you repeat the second part of the question?
What is Black girl magic, and do you believe it properly represents you?
I would say when it comes into Black girl magic, for me, it is being unapologetic and bold and comfortable in your gifts and your identity and being loud about it, right? I think a lot of the times for Black like women and girls, where we are often silenced, we're often overlooked, we're not taken seriously. And so I think when you see, just when you see anyone who's Black, that's a woman or a girl that's like doing her thing, that is living in her truth, I find it to be very magical. And I think it properly just showcases who I am because I'm Black and I'm living in my truth and walking boldly and proudly in it.
Well said.
So you got.
Well, I echo with Joy. I echo what Joy said. The only thing that I would add to that is our ability to persevere in the face of whatever it is that we're facing, any disadvantages that we have the ability to persevere. So that to me also is a defining point of Black girl magic.
For me, I wish, we lived in a world where we didn't have to prove ourselves, because of the color of our skins. I just wish that, it's just known that because I wasn't judged, I didn't have to boast about living in my truth. Like, once I said it, if I say I'm a doctor, you're not asking, oh shit, how the fuck did you become a doctor? Or did you, why can't it be just accepted, believed, and that's what it is? But unfortunately, to piggyback what you guys said is that we have to basically, speak loudly, not loudly in a negative way, but yes, we have to put our good foot forward and basically say, this is what I know, this is who I am, and this is what I've accomplished, where you're going to without second guessing it, and we should be proud of our accomplishments and what we've done in our background. But unfortunately, for us, we have to prove ourselves, and we have to basically say, yeah, I'm just as equal as you are. I have a lawyer degree. I went to school and I did this and I did that. Without like, yeah, right, sure, whatever, But unfortunately for us, we have to have that label because we have to constantly prove ourselves. And I wish we didn't have to. But we don't hear white girl magic. We don't hear Spanish girl magic. We don't hear Asian girl magic, just black girl magic because we have to constantly prove ourselves. And I just wish we didn't have to, just to summarize that.
Pretty much echoing with what everyone else said. I agree with everything. And I also think that black girl magic is our beauty, right? Our ability to be able to switch it up when we have to, our strength, intelligence, the variety. We come in so many different shades and colors, and we're strong, we're tough. We can kind of push through anything. So all of that coupled with everything everyone else said is black girl magic. Hashtag.
So I think this question pairs well as a follow question to that um, previous question. So when it comes to the Black woman's identity, how do you feel about seeing others from different races or backgrounds, take it on? Where it's like, I want to fill my lips. I want to get a big booty now. Um, you know, how do you feel about that? Whether it's not even just that, but it could be just how they they carry themselves. It's like a character build out for some of them in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna show attitude, or roll my neck in a certain way, or do certain things that could just be like attributed to like the Black woman and how she presents and represents herself. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's like a meme that's going around that says, pretty much says it all. They want our identity, but not our struggles. They want everything. They want to copy the culture, everything about us, down to the hair, the toenails, all of it. Um, but they don't want the struggles. They don't want the struggles that come along with having to be a Black woman and having to push through and have the world basically on your shoulders, right? They don't want that, but they want everything else. So, I mean, it's unfortunate because they really should have their own identity, but we're magical. So everybody wants a little piece of that.
Yeah, I
Like
definitely I echo that. And I think it kind of creates this like atmosphere. We're often sexualized and we're often fetishized. I don't even know if I pronounced it right, but you guys know what I mean. But
Is
I
that a
feel like
word?
that's always the
Fetishized.
case.
It's a good one though.
And when just when you look at media, when you look at beauty, when you look at the beauty industry, it is often that, and it creates this false narrative, which I think is then passed on to different races when it comes into white like men that may want a Black woman, right? I often like to look in, I'm not against it, but I often like think to myself like, do you want me, or is it more of this fantasy just because of what you see people do? And so it is one of those things where it's like, if you're gonna pay homage, then pay it correctly, and just make sure that like if you are gonna rock the braids, sorry, I keep getting a phone call. If you are gonna rock the braids, like explain the root of it, like the history of it. And so that's the part that is often annoying to see.
I go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say I agree with what everyone has said. I think that is an indication of just Black people as a whole being the ambassadors of style around the world. What I don't appreciate, however, is how they take our style, but then they don't want to give us the rights that we deserve or treat us as human beings, but then you're trying to look like us. So that part is a bit troubling.
I was gonna say something very similar. For me, it's a good thing that we inspire other cultures. So I look at it, I take a positive from it. But in the interim, I don't want to, I would like for, like, as you just said, don't take nothing else from me. You know, if I inspire you, you know, maybe teach someone else that thinks differently, you know, to have the open mindset of other cultures and accepting it, you know, but at the same time, don't take the culture and then shit on me at the same time, you know, or you know, have a condescending way or tone towards me. So I like the fact that how we inspire them, but you know, respect it fully, not just half-ass. You know, so that's my take on that. That's pretty much how I feel on it. You know, we're just an inspiring culture, you know, and we have so many diverse background and people take to it and gravitate to it, and it's a good thing. But in the process, just, you know,
That kind of goes towards our history, right, of slavery and how we all ended up here, right? Is take, 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 take. They took us from Africa. They brought us here, right? They took the virginity of a lot of women. They, you know, they raped men and women, children. I mean, it's their culture pretty much is to take, right? And it seems like we're always given, but not getting back anything in return. Not even to the point where we're considered human, right?
I
What
have a
kind of
piggyback
project?
question to that question because this is something that, like, because I do youth development, that I do struggle with from time to time, with just hearing how the young people will take on these labels, and they justify them, they're like they openly represent them of people of other races or backgrounds, and I think they just feel like it doesn't devalue them. It only kind of like empowers them, when I think that's just not correct. I think it's really confusing. But when black women, you know, have justified calling themselves bitches or hoes, and doing this on various platforms, it could be, through social media, it could be in music, it could just be in interviews, whatever you want to call it. Like, what are your thoughts when you hear that? Because it's like the the way that I feel like, once again, if someone from another race is looking at that, it's like, oh, that's fine to you. It's okay to be devaluing itself in this manner and just saying like, oh, it's empowering me. You know, I don't know like how you perceive that or how you feel about that, but I would like to hear your insights on that.
So I'm big on, when it comes down to the root meaning of words, I'm really big on that, because I do believe that there are power in words. And I do understand why like people can take a word like that and turn it around and say like, you know what, I'm going to take what was supposed to break me and I'm going to use it to like make me and to build me up, right? But it doesn't take away the root in which it's from. And it does, and for me, power holds words. So if I'm here calling you a BBB, or pretty much I'm embracing it, I might think I'm being empowered. But if you look at the root meaning of the word, what kind of power does that have over my life? Right. And for me, I feel like there was a time when I just really didn't care. I'm just like, oh, okay, I can say whatever I want to say. But in reality, I looked at certain like words I was using and embracing, and I was coupling that, like I was measuring that like based off of the life that I was living, or the life that I actually wanted to live. And it was completely opposite, because of the power of the root word. And also, when it comes into other cultures looking at us, I believe that we are supposed to teach people how we should be spoken to, how we should be treated. And what happens, I think, is that it kind of creates this level of confusion where people's like, okay, so if I'm not a Black woman, just I'm not a woman, I'm not Black, I'm not this, I'm not that, I can't say certain things. And granted, like, yes, we should own that, but I personally don't find it empowering. Like, I don't, if my friends was like, hey, like, a part of me is just like, girl, don't call me that. Like, let's get to the root of it. Don't call me that. Like, if you knew where it comes from, I don't care how much you remix things, how much you change things to make you feel comfortable. It doesn't take away the fact of where it derives from. Right. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that.
agree. It's our job to nip it in the bud when a word is offensive towards you. So if all of us do it, if you don't let that person get away with it, you don't give them a pass and you nip it right then and there, and it's like, what is it, teach one, each one. So if I tell you that now, the next time we encounter one another, you're not going to use that word. You're going to use different words. You're going to respect it. Sometimes, I'll give you that pass you didn't know, but it's my job to, it's to inform you. This language offends me. And we're going to be acquaintance, or we're going to be cool, or we're going to be hanging out. Don't talk to me in that manner, or don't use those certain words, because once I let you slide it, then now we're in a bigger setting, or we're outdoors, and other people hear us, engaging in these ways, like, oh yeah, because they sound ignorant, or now we're being judged all over again. So it's our job to nip it in the bud, and we let people know, I feel a certain way, or I'm offended when you use this word, and moving forward, use a different word in the vocabulary, to express how you feel or whatever. It doesn't have to be the B word or the H word or the N word, like even, when the brothers call, yeah, my nigga this, my nigga that, like, do we have to really say that? I know it's part of the culture, it's the language, but can we use a different word, but it's just our job to nip it in the bud, and then hopefully, it will just continue on, and we'll all be on the same page at some point, hopefully.
Yeah, I definitely echo what everyone has said so far. I think that for those that say that they're using the words to take away the power, or whatever their rationale was behind that, I think that that's just an excuse. And I think with time and maturity, they'll learn why that is detrimental to the culture.
Yeah.
When I hear it, and it just it it came more to mind in terms of just like what the viewpoint is. It's like, if this was something you chose to negatively identify me, how am I going to positively identify with it?
Right.
You know, and it's like that's how you negatively label me. So now you telling me that now this is going to be something I positively label myself with. It's like,
Yeah, I don't
nah,
understand the logic in that.
nah, like,
Or even like, sorry, I'll continue.
no, go ahead.
No, just to change it up a little bit, like even like with symbols, I'm really big on symbols when people use them and don't know the history. For example, like the gangs, I'm not sure which gang uses it, but there's a symbol like this. And when I see it, I know the history behind it and I know where it comes from. But I get annoyed at how when I see people of color using it in their, whether it's Crip or Blood, I'm not sure what it is, but don't know where it's come from. This means white power. If you look it up, certain symbols mean very offensive shit towards people of color. And when you don't know it, you're not educated on it, and you're out there taking pictures and you're posing like this, you look stupid. And then sometimes I tell my kids, sometimes, it's my job to teach you, and it's your job to want to learn also certain things, certain words you use, the history. I would struggle watermelon. I take that offensively when people say, oh, are you gonna go home and eat some watermelon and chicken? Like, do you know the reason the watermelon thing stemmed from when we were freed from slave back in 1865? We had nothing. We had no money, no nothing. We had to sell watermelon to get money to build. So when you say go home and eat watermelon, I'm very offended because we took something, we had nothing, and tried to build after we were freed from slave, and only years later, it's a offensive word. So certain things, it's like, it's our duty to understand the culture and understand where it comes from. So when you hear it in the street, you can educate somebody who may not, honestly do not know and do not understand, and say, listen, I heard you say this, but do you know where it came from? Do you know how offensive it is? Do you know what we had to do to get where we are today? We had to sell watermelon seeds just to put money in our pocket, or when guys are taking pictures like this, bro, why are you taking a picture like that? Do you understand that, what it means in other cultures? You look foolish. So even with words and symbols, it's our job to teach and educate, and hopefully, somebody with an open mindset will grasp it, digest it, and like, you know what, damn, I did look stupid by saying that or saying that. Maybe we could change somebody's, and if you're able to change somebody's mind, I think that's one good thing. Like, okay, I did my job. Now this person won't use that word anymore, or won't use that symbol anymore, and and then we're taking steps to living in a more productive and unified world. In my opinion. I don't want to go off on a tangent because I have a lot of shit going on.
Sounds like
in
you
my
was
head
about to
right now,
have
but
"We Are the World" moment. You better
yeah,
calm
I
down
am.
over there.
I know, but let's stay on task.
Come on now, sis.
I'm sorry.
One thing that I observed Sherrice do, which actually I took more like note of, is because as she is a parent, and if we're ever playing music in the house and it's got curse words and things like that, she's like, turn that off. You not play that around my children. So it's like, and it's like something I really took note of, because it's like, even if you may greatly enjoy the song, and whatever age range you might have heard that song, you having your nostalgic moment. I'm like, yeah, I'm in my bag, but you got me turning down Biggie. But it's like, you know what? You gotta respect what it is. You gotta respect what it is, because it's like, that's not only that person's house, but they also trying to make sure there's consistent positive messaging that's occurring and happening around their children.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't have like it'll probably never be everyone. But if there's people that are actually like, you know what, I'm going to take a stance against this because this is not right. So what the language I utilize, how I like, how I listen to music or certain things, or who I'm playing music around, I'm just not going to let that happen.
Yep.
So.
Well, the N word makes me cringe, right? So when I hear it, I'm like, like immediately, it's like people that use it around me. I don't care who they are, how well I know them. If I don't know them well, I immediately do not use that N word in my presence, right? And then people are like, oh no, it's a term of endearment. No, I love you is a term of endearment, right? The N word is not. It has negative connotation attached to it. There's no way to remove the root of the meaning of that word at all, right? But I mean, like, you have the media, you have the music industry, all of these things that are like working against us, right? So as much as we try to push, right, to move away from the use of negative language, you have like these big conglomerates that are pushing back against us to kind of like shove it down the throats of our youth, right? And those of us that are not as intelligent or as bright as we should be, right? Because I think a lot of our people are smart, they just don't tap into their gifts, right? And yet they run around and they use the word and they like this, oh homie, man. And it's like, you're a fool, because the moment a white person walks up and they use that same word, you're ready to fight. Why? It's a term of endearment. You can't have it both ways. Either it has negative connotation and it's extremely offensive to you, or it's we are the world, right? Like, you need to decide which way it's going to go. And that's part of the problem, because you have forces, positive and negative forces, that are just like kind of constantly at each other, because they don't want us to believe in ourselves, and they don't want us to feel empowered, right? And to know that we have gifts and we have magic and we are capable. So if you can continue to keep us basically drugged up on the foolishness, then we won't aspire to be better, right, than what we are, or what our parents have been, or or any of our ancestors. We won't push forward to do better, to be better, to be great. So just the word of the N word, the B word doesn't bother me as much as the N word, because the B word could be used pretty much for anyone, for a man, for a woman, for anything. But the N word, it's tied to Black people, so it has a different type of, it hits differently, very differently, very, very differently. But yeah, there's that.
Got it. Um, you spoke a little bit to this, and it wasn't directly to the question, but it had you provided like an answer in the previous episode that we recorded on it. So I just want to just ask the question directly and see if there's any additional insight that comes from it. Which is, do you think there are major disconnections between the Black man and Black woman in our present society? And if so, then what are they?
Yeah, there's a huge disconnect. I remember I was at this discussion. It was about 2 summers ago, and it was the topic of discussion. And it was, this guy brought up a really good point. When it comes into Black men and Black women, there's this viewed as pretty much who is the most like oppressed, right? There's this back and forth talk. Like, as a Black man, you're Black, so you are dealing with being oppressed and dealing with the issues of this world, right? But again, there's still a level of privilege because you're still a man. Whereas for when it's with a Black woman, it's a double-edged sword. You're a woman and you're Black. And so I think very often, you know, you have Black men that are like, okay, but still, like, I'm gunned down, I'm, you know, dealing with this, that, and the third. And with women, it's like, well, you know, I'm a woman and I'm Black and I'm dealing with all of these other things. And I just feel like we're not talking to listen, we're talking to try to prove a point. Like, I don't feel like we talk to really understand certain things, that there are certain events like I just wouldn't go to, like if I'm reading the description and with the topic, because a part of me is like, are people ready to listen, to understand? Because I honestly feel like some people are not ready to have those types of conversations. And so I think there is a huge feud. And I, you know, hopefully, you know, in the near future that we'll all be on one accord, because even with simple things that happened even last year, not simple, but very tragic things happening last year, when there was a lot of Black men's lives lost. But when you think of the issues around the Black women that were being gunned down, it wasn't the same noise. And people were very open about that and was like, men, just where you guys at? Where y'all at? Because when you look at the protests, it was Black women were there to support. It was Black women who were leading that. And then when there's a black like woman that is gunned down, you know, like, it was very quiet. And so I think we just have to show up for one another. But I also think that there is a huge divide. And I think the only way we can kind of make sure that we're on the same court is that we heal, right? We heal, because I think we don't understand that just when you think of white like supremacy, this is what they want. They want us to be divided. They want us to be against one another. And there's power in unity. We know that. But imagine within the Black community, it's greater power if Black men and Black women stop trying to fight against one another and pretty much all of that sort. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Joy. The only thing I would add is, I think that the reason for the disconnect, or one of the reasons for the disconnect, is like there's this huge attack on the Black family. I think that for all different reasons, just fathers, not single fathers, single mothers. Also, there's been this big push with like independent women, and there's nothing wrong with being independent, but it's almost like, oh, I don't need a man. So like that's another attack on a Black family. So I think that definitely perpetuates a disconnect.
Agree. I don't, honestly, the other women, they said pretty much everything that I would have said. So I don't have anything to add to it. You know, just I wish that we didn't, there wasn't a disconnect between a man and a woman, because we're already proving ourselves to everyone else. Now we have to prove ourselves to our men, and the men have to prove themselves to the women, and that's added pressure that neither side needs right now. So, unfortunately, it is what it is, and until a woman can say, you know what, all right, how do we stop the division, and how do we come together so we can be that successful couple and successful family that other people are going to want to mimic. And there are some out there. There are some positive, strong families out there, right? And and I'm happy that they're fighting through the adversities that they face, and And that's pretty much it. I really don't have more to add to what you ladies already said, because it's true and it's unfortunate.
I think there's less of a disconnect than we actually uh, believe there is, right? Because like I don't know if like a lot of you guys have been paying attention lately, but like over the last I want to say 5 months or so, 5 or 6 months, there was like a huge like media push for black women are doing this and black men are not. Black men aren't showing up, but black women are. And I don't know, because like when I watched a lot of the Black Lives Matter protests and things like that, I saw black men, black women, a mixture of people that were out there. Um, so I think like we're all coming together for the cause, right? And then when it comes to the black family, well, yeah, there's an attack on it because there can't be unity. Again, if we're unified, then we're stronger together, right? You can't build a house on a foundation that's weak. So what do you have to do? You have to break up that foundation. You have to break up that family. And if you have husbands and wives going at each other's throats and kids not listening and they're running up and down the street, then that's perfect. That's a recipe for someone to end up in jail, for them not to prosper, for them not to excel, right? And I don't know, maybe when you're in a relationship, and that just goes for everyone. I don't think it's just a black thing, but I think that goes for everyone. Like if you have any type of difficulty, maybe sometimes you need to bring someone in, right? And that might be an issue within our black community because a lot of black men don't like to go to doctors of any kind, right? And that's a whole nother conversation. But sometimes you need someone that you can speak to or you can release and you can share thoughts and feelings that you're having, and that goes for women and for men. And sometimes you can't do that with your partner, right? And it's unfortunate, right? Because if we could all have those relationships where we're best friends and we can say anything and do anything, then that would be amazing. But it's not a reality, right? So sometimes people need extra assistance and they need to maybe go to a pastor or to a therapist or someone that they could just speak to be able to share what it is that they're feeling that's keeping them bottled up. And then I think that a lot more of our black relationships would be much more successful if we were able to open up to advice from others, right? No one can do it all on their own. You need some sort of help or a push or something to kind of keep you on the straight and narrow. But I think like we're coming together a lot more these days than we have in the past, you know, despite what the media says.
Thank you
It's
all for sharing or speaking to that. Um, I think that the in agreement with most of what you said. Like I feel like the generational trauma is highly significant, and it has pit us against one another. You know, and I like it because I think I'm such a music fan. When I listen to music and then I just see how the black woman might be portrayed or the black man portrays themselves and it's so misogynistic and things like that. And kind of like when y'all was speaking previously in the last episode about like how the hypersexualization of black men and just the mistreatment on women, but especially the black woman, which was probably part of their foundation in terms of how maybe their dating life began or whatnot, and then it probably shifted gears as they got older or more experience in their dating life. But just the ill treatment and which leads to further disconnect, which leads to bitterness, which leads to disunity, which leads to like I can't really connect with you. I gotta look beyond you to really see something of what I feel makes the most sense for me and is protecting me, and my peace. So I do feel like there there's probably it's a maybe more of a 60-40% in terms of disconnection. 60% being a disconnection. And that 40% is like I think we are becoming better, as people are becoming more conscious, maybe they are like being more mindful of the history, and studying that and becoming aware of how they need to appropriately conduct themselves as Black people, period. You know, and I think that plays a part with like us building up on a percentage of a better understanding of who we are and how we need to be protective of one another and be unified amongst one another. So, but I definitely feel like, yeah, it's probably the 60-40 because it's just, the popular parts of, like, just to say, just use an example of like the hip hop culture, or just the just I forgot what the term is. That's why I'm blanking on it. And I'm using just hip hop culture. But uh regardless, like, this is like part of like what we see on TV, social media, videos, all of that good stuff. These portrayals where it's like, okay, like you're representing people in a negative light, but there's actually like, so it's being used as part of the system once again to cause the disunity. So it's like seeing those things is like, it's still vastly popular compared to showing representation where there is unity, where there's more positive storylines saying, oh wow, this African American couple, meet the Johnsons, let's just use it as example, but they doing all these great things in the community, blah blah blah. You know, that's the thing. You know, so yeah, those are my thoughts on that. Um, what are your views on parenting Black?
That is necessary. It's very necessary. Parenting Black, I think, to me, means discipline. Just I mean, I'm not trying to paint white parenting with a broad stroke and saying there's no discipline, but I have seen, and it could just be because of what I've been exposed to, but I see that, like, sometimes when I'm in a supermarket or in a store and they're letting their children run wild, whereas, like, the Black parent will, keep their children in line. And I think that we saw the results of that play out, especially with the last president, that we've seen on, what happens when you don't keep your children in line, and how detrimental that could be to our society. So yeah, I think it's necessary.
Yeah.
Are you asking the meaning of parenting Black? Is that what the
Oh, sorry.
I know, because
Oh,
I interpreted it as, for me, how I would have answered
That wasn't the question.
It wasn't the question.
If it's
I-
important to parent Black, correct?
Oh,
Yeah, what are your views on parenting Black? So if you
okay.
deem it important, if you feel like you have a meaning, you want to share.
It's extremely important. And I think that part, and it drives me batty, right? And this is just like from personal experience that I've had with Black friends, right? I don't think that there's enough education, right? If you're going to parent Black, that means that you have to be able, one, to discipline your kid, right? At the same time, while you discipline them, you also need to allow them a sense of creativity, right? To be able to shine and still do wild and crazy things, just not in the department store or in the supermarket rolling down the aisle because they want Fruit Loops or something like that. So I think that it's important that you have to be able to let them grow and be creative, but at the same time they need discipline and structure like any child. But part of parenting Black is in helping your children to understand their culture, right? Their history, their ancestry, their current position in this world, right? And I think that a lot of times, and this goes for some of my Black friends, they have this whole you know, euphoric type of attitude, and I don't see color. And it's like, if you don't see color, then you don't see yourself, right? Like, you have to be able to see color because the world sees color, right? And anyone that says like, oh no, I don't, you're confused and you don't know your history. And you're instilling that into your children and not preparing them for the world, because the world is hard and the world is tough. And as much as we coddle and we want them to believe that they can do anything in the world that they put their mind to, right? Because they're capable, you have a world that's going to beat down on their back and tell them the opposite. And they need to be able to be prepared right, to handle that pressure, right? Got to make diamonds out of coal. And if they're not prepared and they're not ready, then they fail. They don't succeed. They don't do well, or they assimilate, right? And then they don't feel whole when they assimilate because they're not who they really are, right? They're trying to be someone else and trying to fit into someone else's box instead of creating their own and living their truth or living their life. You know, it's like, no, you don't have to be like white people. You don't have to be like Spanish people, right? You can be you, and it's okay to be Black and love that and be proud of that. Like, I don't know, every other day I tell my little one, my 4 year old, you're Black and you're beautiful. We have a song and dance that we do with it. And I swing around the room, and then she jumps up on the bed and she's like, I'm Black and I'm beautiful. I'm Black and I'm beautiful. And it's a joy because she needs to be able to see and understand that she is Black and she is beautiful. And there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you have like all of these shows that are on TV that don't necessarily show us in a positive light. And a lot of these kid shows, it's like just throwing white culture down your throat to the point where you want to vomit, right? She loved Disney Channel, but for heaven's sakes, you know, we had a Black princess and it was involved and enveloped in voodoo. And then we had the movie Soul, which mainly focused on, you know, putting the Black man that really didn't accomplish much in his life into a cat, putting his soul into a cat. So there's not a lot of positive things out there. You know, you got Doc McStuffins and things like that, but there's not a lot of stuff that they can see and watch on TV where this person looks like them and they're like, oh my God, and they're mesmerized. You know, like my daughter loves Frozen, and that's fine that you love Frozen and you think Elsa's awesome, right? But I want you to also understand that Tiana's awesome and Tiana looks like you. And you don't have to get a wig to run around and look like Elsa because you're beautiful the way you are and you can be powerful and magical without having to emulate this white image that they've provided for you, because there seems to be a lot of that and there's not enough when it comes to our youth that they can look up and they can say, oh wow, she looks like me. Oh wow, like he looks like my dad. And they're doing something great and something positive. There's not enough of that, which is, you know, with Kamala Harris being elected vice president, that's a beautiful thing, right? Because it's a Black face that you see in this position of power. And it's like, I could do that. I can be that one day, right? Obama being, you know, the first Black president, our young boys, I can be that. I can do that. Like, I can be this. Like, they need that representation. They need to be able to see things and to be able to feel it and know that they can deep down inside achieve it. And if you don't have anything that represents you, then you're going to feel like, okay, well, I can't. I need to work in the mailroom for the rest of my life because I can never be the partner or the CEO of this company because no one's ever done it. People, you know, that look like me don't do that. They're not successful in that regard. So it's extremely important to parent Black. Um, and it's extremely important to educate our kids so they know their history and they understand it because the schools aren't doing it. I mean, one year my older daughter came out and said, "Oh, Martin Luther King was a speaker." Hmm? A speaker? That's it? He was just a speaker. But this is what they're teaching them in school. And if we're not diligent in making sure that they're educated, then they're not going to know. They're not going to know. They're not going to understand. They're not going to be prepared. That's my take on Black parenting and how important it is. Dun, dun, dun. Now let me
I'm happy. It's funny that you said that because for us, last night, as a matter of fact, we were at the dinner table. You know, and that's another, you know, thing that families, I don't know, I didn't grow up sitting at the dinner table with my family eating with everyone. Everyone was eating in their room, separate places. But anyhow, you know, I started the discussion trying to teach my kids the value of securing their financial assets at a young age, you know, building credit, you know. So parenting Black is giving your kids the tools to be successful individuals when they get out there in society. I know my mom's Haitian and she never told me, you know, you can't use 30% of your credit card utilization. If you max that out, you know, you don't build that relationship with credit card companies and now you have bad credit. Kids don't know that. So it's our job now to teach them those tools now so they can go out, you know, they can have, and so they know about A1 credit. You know, they're not, you know, with poor credit, you know, they start they're starting life with a disadvantage and not able to secure their finances. Because I don't want to say that how, a lot of Black homes don't teach their kids that, but I don't know how many parents in general teaches their kids how to be financially responsible. So parenting Black is giving your kids tools to be successful and beating odds that are against them. You know, speaking a certain way, having a different language than your peers, or certain jobs, and to be successful in school, and take education serious, and take nothing for granted. And if you have $1, you don't want to spend 50% of it. Maybe you want to spend on a quarter and save 75 cents. So it's like, it's our job to teach our kids, all these tools to be successful and productive citizens as they get older. And if we don't, that's how we lose our youth, and then now we're leaving it up for the streets to teach them. And that's how our kids unfortunately get into trouble, because we're not at home, or maybe because, a single mom, she's too busy to teach that, because now she has to work 3 jobs to keep food on the table. So she can teach her kids, or values of life, and she's doing the right thing, she's doing what she can, but the kid is not getting those values at home. So now, unfortunately, he's in the streets, or she's in the streets, and gang banging, or whatever, the streets are teaching them. And, now the kid's at a disadvantage. So it's hard for a parent to, especially if it's at a 2-parent household, and the mom or the dad has to do everything, and they can't be at both places at the same time. You can't be home teaching your kids, because you're out there, hustling and bustling to put food on the table. Your kid doesn't understand that. Hopefully he does, or she does. But then again, they go out in the streets, and now the streets are raising them. So it's a lot of pressure for a parent to parent Black. It's a lot of pressure for a parent as well, to want to do the right thing, but sometimes they don't have the tools themselves to do the right thing and provide for their family. Not just, putting food on the table, but mentally, and teaching your kids, right from wrong, and not assuming that how, they'll get it, because I don't want my kids to learn in the street what they could have learned at home. I don't want them, at a disadvantage, and, they don't have a secure bank account. They don't have a good job. So it's a lot of pressure for a parent as well, in my opinion, to term parent Black.
And it doesn't help when a lot of things are glorified, right? Like you have TikTok and YouTube and Twitter and all these things where everything is glorified, where, these kids think that they're gonna come out of high school and they're gonna make, $300,000, and they're gonna be driving Lamborghinis and living in these big glorious homes. And it's like there's no sense of reality, right? Like, but all of this is being shoved down their throats, and it's hard. It's an uphill battle. It's an uphill battle. It's like
Sure.
I'm constantly going at it with my 12-year-old, soon to be 13, about how important it is, that you have your own, how important it is that you hold on to your money, and and that you are independent, and you don't have to rely on people to take care of you or for things that you want. And it's a struggle, because she watches TikTok and all of these things, and she's like, oh well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be rich, and and I'm like, well, how? What's the plan? Like there has to be a plan. There has to be something. And I think it's all of the stuff is just so glorified about, oh, you can do this, and oh well, you can have this, and if you're a rapper, you're rich. And I try to explain to a lot of those rappers aren't rich, right? Like a lot of the stuff that they're showing is rented, the vehicles, the jewelry, like they don't necessarily own it all. So don't think that you're going to be a rapper and you're immediately going to be Jay-Z, because that may or may not happen, right? But if that's something you really want to do, yeah, we can support you, but you have to make sure you get your education and everything else in the process, right? So that way you have something to fall back on if this, dream of yours doesn't work out. But I don't think enough people have those conversations, and it is hard, because sometimes you are working and you can't necessarily be there, especially if you're a single parent. And this is where friends and the streets and everything start to take hold of the kids. But I think that if you can really instill in them, like really drill it into them, like they'll find their way back, you know, They'll get their head screwed on right.
Yeah, actually, segued into the follow up question,
Oh wow.
which was how much of an impact do you think single parenthood has on a black family?
It has a lot of impact, I think. I think it's really hard because like and then it depends on right how that whole structure is set up, right? You have a single parent, and is it that the mother or the father are not in the kid's life because they're in prison, right? They're on drugs, or they just chose not to be there, right? So you have a bunch of different variables, and um, based on those variables, you have different outcomes and how they affect the black family. So that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough question, Ron.
I just want that is a tough question.
I got to
I
think about that.
well, my parents divorced when I was 10. My father was around, paying child support and all the rest and spending time, but it was just me and my mom. For me personally, I felt like they had two different viewpoints on how on the type of person I should get into a relationship with. My mom on one hand was like, you find a man to take care of you. And then my father was like, make sure you have your own. So I've experienced a time in my life where I was like on both extremes. For a very long time, I had a hard time accepting anything from any man. I'm like, no, I got it. And I didn't realize how much of the impact that had on me mentally. I can't even accept a gift or a compliment or anything because I'm independent. I can do it on my own. So for me personally, it was just kind of hard to find a balance because both weren't in the home at the same time. If that opens anything up. That's just for me.
Being a single parent could be a good thing and it could be a bad thing for a kid. A kid has an advantage to, like Sherrice said, depending on why that absent parent is not there. If the parent, God forbid, the parent passed away, and it's just one, and you're being raised by one. Now as a parent, you're faced with what's more important. Do I work 2 to 3 jobs to keep food on the table, or do I teach guidance instruction in my kid where I keep them active in sports? So now they don't have time to run the streets or do anything they're not supposed to be doing. So, do I just find a 9 to 5? And, if I need public assistance, if I need help, I'll do that. It's a sacrifice I'm making to ensure that my kid stays busy and doesn't have the opportunity to, get into drugs or, teenage, having, sex at an early age, getting pregnant at an early age. So now, being a single parent, I had to choose whether or not I'm gonna work 2 or 3 jobs or just work one job, put my pride aside, get the assistance that I need to make sure my kid has a chance at being successful, because I feel that how when a kid is bored and sitting home because the single parent is out there struggling, a bored kid, tends to do and get into trouble. But if they're in sports, if they're in Girl Scouts, if you keep them stay busy, then you can reap what a single parent can benefit from that. Now you're not paying lawyer fees to get your kid out of jail, or to represent, your kid for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. So sometimes it's a sacrifice a parent has to make, whether they're gonna be active in their kid's life, so they can save tears down the line and not burying their kid, or you know, you're gonna work those 8 jobs and pray to God that your kid, you know, turns out and understands what you're trying to do and stays home, you know, stays prayed up and stays educated, stays in school, and doesn't get distracted by outside influences, you know. So it's tough. It's tough for a single parent because ultimately it leads to what the kid's gonna want to do, and ultimately it leads on, you know, what you teach that kid too. You know, every day you come home at a certain, even if you're working 8 jobs, but at least have like a structure where you come home at a certain time, you're having lunch with your kid, you're engaged in their life. You know, what did you do? So the kid's like, you know what, all right, you know, my mother's working hard, I'm gonna make her proud, I'm gonna cook dinner for her maybe, or I don't know. It could be like a two-way street where a kid has enough sense to say, you know what, I'm going to work with my parent, whether it's a father, I'm going to work with them and make it easier for them and take the load off of them as well too. So I don't know. I think it's tough. It's really tough, and it's a scary. I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to go off on a tangent, but it's rough for a single parent for sure.
And then
Sure.
As Tashante said, right, I didn't even think about that aspect of it until you mentioned it about your life experience, because right, that affects the Black family, right, and that affects the child, right, and how they end up loving and how they end up embracing or not embracing people as they get older, right, and who they attract, um, and how they build their family and raise their children and so on and so forth. It's like a domino effect, right? So here you had on one end, because both parents were not in the same household, you were trying to please your father, right? And listening to everything that he instilled in you and making sure that you were going to be that strong, independent Black woman where you didn't need anybody to take care of you, right? But then at the same time, your mother's trying to instill something into you also that, well, you don't have to be the strong, independent woman. You're worthy, and someone should be able to take care of you, right? Not saying that you shouldn't be independent, and I don't know if I'm adding to this, right? But at the same time, you deserve to be pampered and spoiled as well, right? So you should be able to find someone that can take care of you. So I think she wanted like all of these beautiful extra things for you, right? That a woman should have, but then at the same time, your father probably wanted those things for you too. But they both wanted you to be happy, right? And to have everything that the world has to offer you. But it's almost like how do you mix that, right? So it can come out. It's interesting because it's like how do you put those two things together to become the perfect you, right? To become the best you, where you're open to receive all types of things from a mate, right? And it makes it tough because I'm sure some of the guys you probably dated, they're like, oh, she's probably a bitch, she's so coarse and so hard, and but then that also invites other men to come in to be like, oh, well, she got it, she can take care of me, right?
Oh my
So
goodness.
you know what I'm saying? It's like she gonna be my boo.
Yeah.
Good mama.
So, yeah, so I mean that's a tough one because it can positively affect a kid, right? Which will in turn positively affect their family structure. It can negatively affect. I mean, like that's a really tough. I mean, it's that question is so compacted, right? Like, it's a lot. There's a lot to unfold in that, and I think like if a single parent, if a parent dies, it's almost easier. And I know that sounds wrong, but it's like they're removed from the situation and the child has lost and the child has to grieve, right? But then there's only one viewpoint, maybe, that they can follow, opposed to like feeling like, oh, well, my daddy or mommy didn't want me, so that's why they left. Or they chose the streets over me, or they chose drugs over me, or, just having the two views kind of like at each other. But so my sister, one of my sisters, um, uh, she actually quit her job in the city that was paying her really well, because my nephew started not doing so great in school. And she had a nice little commute, right? She moved out of the projects, wanted to come up to, live in an area to give him a better life, better education. So she did that and she commuted. And he started not doing so well. He was acting up in school, he was having some behavioral issues, and he was failing. And so she made a conscious decision to quit her job that was paying her pretty well, to take a job, right, that was barely paying her anything. So that way he would
Give
be
him
able to
structure.
have, yeah, more attention,
See?
more structure, and have her present, have a parent present, because his father, he was caught up in the streets running around, acting the fool and not necessarily um being present as he should have been. But it that turns out well for some people, but not for everyone, right? Because someone could quit their job and then, take on a job that pays less money, and then the kid has less things, and then they want to prove to their friends that they're tough and they can dress a certain way and everything, and so then they go to the streets and start getting into mischief because they want money, So yeah, I
Exactly.
got nothing wrong.
No, that's
It's
I'm going around
parenting
in
it's
life.
circles, still trying
yeah.
to answer this.
You
And
said something.
It's hard to find
You
balance.
said
It's hard to
something.
find a
It's
balance.
knowledge and everything. So
Yeah.
don't
yeah,
devalue it.
Going back to what we're saying, it's hard to be a single parent because you had to make that decision whether you're gonna, struggle and bustle to put food on the table, or the one job and to be more active in your kid's life, because that will ultimately decide, be the determining factor how your kid turns out, and like your sister, she just proved my case. She had to quit her job in order to provide stability and to be more active, an active parent in her son's life. And hopefully it worked out for her, and then now you can say that sacrifice was worth it. Is so it's hard for a parent to make those decisions every day. Like, what's more important, the dollars or my kid's future? And sometimes, you're going to pick your kid's future because the ex is already on his back. He's a black man, and he was living in the project, so he already had those strikes against him. Now it's the parents' duty, to do her, to make sure he doesn't, meet the statistics of a failing black man or a broke black man. So she had to make that sacrifice to take a step back to give her son the advantage, because already he's at a disadvantage. He's born a male black. So kudos to your sister for that, for sure. Kudos. Yes, and I hope your nephew made her proud at the end. It was all worth it.
he's still working on it. He's a work in
He's
progress.
making
Work
progress.
in progress for real.
Making progress. That's all.
But we have faith. So
But
Yes.
kudos.
he still
Kudos
has
for
a little village.
Yeah, he definitely has a village. That's what it takes. That's what they say.
kudos to her. Kudos. That's a strong black woman right there.
Yep.
So, who has the role of head of household
I
in
do.
these present times? Hold on, calm down.
Let him finish your question.
Who has the role of head of household in these present times? Is that role assignment relevant anymore?
It's
So who
always
has the
relevant.
say what?
It's always relevant.
Okay.
It's
And
always
you feel
relevant.
like you do.
Yeah. You gonna disagree with that, Ron?
I plead the fifth.
Okay, so maybe I'm being a bit of a jerk. So I probably don't have like the title of head of household. My husband probably has it, but I think I do a lot of the decision making, and I handle all the the disciplinary and stuff. So disciplinary actions that have to come to head in the household. So I know I think I have it.
For me, growing up, seeing my parents, it was obviously like, just like having my dad there, typical guy, head of the household. But one thing I did see was partnership. So I saw my parents doing a lot of communication when there were different types of choices that needed to be made, as far as, just even them moving. There was definitely a lot of conversation. And that was, even looking back, like I I have a desire more, and so like just for a partnership. I say partnership now more than I say marriage, because I think sometimes with marriage we're so used to this hierarchy of just like, oh, the man is head of the household and then the woman just keeps the house. And there's power in pretty much every role. And so for me, just growing up, it was just seeing my parents work together. And I'm not trying to put my parents' business out there, but like even with income, right? Like I have a mom who makes more than my dad, but it was never felt in the house. Like my mom never talked down on my father. She never was like, okay, like, what do you know? And challenged him because of income. So I was just so used to that like partnership piece. And I think for anyone who might be in my like age range, we now look more and so for this partnership thing. I mean, there are some that are like, no, I need the man to be the head to do everything. My goal is just to be, is really just to stay at home and to make sure everything is in order. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because that's a lot of work. Like, I feel like every single mother needs a check for life just because it really is a lot. And so I think now people are striving more for that like partnership. Like it doesn't matter who makes the most, doesn't matter with your job level. Like, okay, are we collectively coming together and just more and so working and like building together?
For me, I grew up in a single parent household. So getting into a relationship, I had that mindset that I didn't need a man for anything. So every year that my husband decided to stay with me, I had to realize that I had to take that step back mentally and let him be the man of the household. So sometimes, I feel like when it comes to role playing, let a man be a man and a woman be a woman, but that doesn't mean that how the assumption is how, because I'm the woman, I'm gonna come home and cook after a long day work. No, we're gonna split it. You cook one day, I'll cook the next. So it's coming together, and making it work. So I don't do I had to struggle with the role thing and let a man be a man and let the woman be the woman. And I think it works in our household. And I don't take nothing. As far as who makes more, we don't discuss that. We don't joke about it. It is what it is. Yeah, it works for us. I don't know for the rest of the ladies.
We don't discuss income with the kids or anything in my household. So like they're not aware of who makes more or who doesn't make more, right? They just know that mommy is usually the one that disciplines and daddy doesn't. Daddy usually lets them get away with murder. But I'm usually the one that comes down with the heavy fist, right? Like, no, you can't do this or, whatever. But like when it comes to like making big household decisions, we have a conversation about it. But typically I can't say I always make the final choice because I think it is a group effort. Like we do discuss things and so forth, but like if I really think it's something that's in the best interest of our family, then I really push for it. And maybe 9 out of 10 times it comes to pass. Like that's the route that we usually go. But then I also think that he trusts me to be able to do the research and check into things where it's like, all right, well, she's already done that. So if she said that this is the route we should go, then yeah, let's go it. I don't get too much pushback with that.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. I'm not married or, have a family yet. However, just from previous life experiences, I think that it's important to find a balance. Mm-hmm. So when that time does come and I do have a husband and a family and so on and so forth, I think, I'm going to go with that route, just discussing it. Funny story, you said, let a man be a man. When I started to allow guys to pay for dates and such, I used to always say that in my mind, like, yeah, you know what, let a man be a man. Go ahead and pay for that. Go ahead and buy that chicken.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to. So,
I don't want to go, all the way off the board and become a gold digger, but again, balance is very important.
It is, for sure.
Why not? We're worth it as women, right? We work hard. We should be treated and taken out to dinner and spoiled.
Absolutely.
Here and there. What?
You can supersize it.
Get that 2-piece. all white meat.
Right. We'll drink water at the house.
Right.
Don't get a drink with that.
It's important.
Right.
But yeah, I think I don't know. And I like the whole dual concept, but maybe just with society, they're always going to stick the head of household title on someone, right?
Right.
I mean, for heaven's sakes, it's on our IRS paper, our tax forms, right? Someone has to assume the position.
I
True.
actually brought this question up when I did where are we at with our black men credibility with a group of black males, and they really feel like it is more of a collaborative effort nowadays. They feel like, yeah, it's not the way it was. You
Mhm.
know, I think one of the things also that I took note of, because of course, you know, being raised in a, I guess whatever you want to call it, Reese, is our level of dysfunctional single parent household. Uh, but it was one of those things where it's the recognition probably wasn't given as much as it was deserved for what the woman does, you know, to protect that household, to protect that environment, and to make sure that her children are safe. You know, I think that was one of the things which I like. I feel like we definitely gravitated to more of a collaborative effort when it comes to that. But I feel like there was also, like, I think some level of lack of recognition for the woman in the household for all that she has sacrificed, if whether or not it was doing a dual role. You know, you're trying to be as present as you can in the household, but you also know you got to go out and work. You know, if you can as work as you much, you know how to take advantage, just is what it is, of public assistance. You know how to stretch that money, you know how to make it work and make sure it benefits the whole family, especially if it's a bigger family, and you know you got a bunch of mouths to feed. So, there was nothing wrong with going to the neighbor's house next door and borrowing some sugar. It just was what it was. But yeah, I think nowadays it's definitely more of a collaborative effort. Um, and then sometimes, like, just depending on, yeah, if there is, like, if there's a difference in terms of who makes the most money, it's all good. It's like, yo, it's all good. It's like, okay, like, you make more money than me, and like that's not taken away from me being a man, or is that not taken away from you being a woman? Like, you still who you are, and that's why I respect you, as like the point you were bringing up, Reese, which I think is another thing that some people may not consider, is like, okay, you're probably really good at doing research on certain things.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, like I did my research. I don't mind doing it. So I like doing it. It was done. And this is how I feel like we can make the best decision for our household. The other person, like, I don't really want to do all that, man. But she good at that. Like, let's move forward with that. It could just be simple, as simple as that, or vice versa in terms of the role reverse. But
Mhm.
I feel like that is something like people may not consider as much as well. It's like your partner may be good at doing certain things very well, and you're probably not. It's just the balance, how you balance it out, and how you balance it to the point where there's no lack of respect that's happening.
Yep.
So,
Huge. But we still have to pick something on the tax forms.
you do.
True.
So this is actually the last question I have. Um, but no, I have another one, but it was more of a referring to a documentary that I saw on Netflix that I thought you should check out if you haven't yet. Um, so the last question is not the last question. All right, got
What's the
that out the way.
documentary?
Um, so yeah, I guess we could go there first. It's called Crack.
Crack?
Hmm.
Okay.
It's on Netflix. I recently watched it, and it was going into a depth breakdown on like how the government was involved with
Hmm.
allowing the drugs to be filtered into the United States. And of course, it was cocaine, but was turned into crack. And then it was talk about the levels of impact. They even showed a point where when you had the Just Say No campaign, and then you see they show a depiction of Nancy Reagan, and she's smiling at a front of a group of individuals as they let go balloons, and she's like, "Just say no." How are you gonna say just say no to someone who's high on a crack rock? It's like, what? like, like what? Are you serious? So anyway, it was just
Never met a crackhead.
various depictions. They were depicting how the black woman was like the main reason for why there was children who were like you know born as crack babies and things like that. And they even showed a case where one woman was charged with they said selling drugs to her child because the child, I guess, had, because she was a crack addict. That was it. She was a crack addict, and then it was just showing you how like it was like misrepresentation, false reporting, and they're saying it was a large percentage of crackhead babies or crack babies when it wasn't a large percentage of crack babies. So it was a good documentary, but I felt like if you haven't watched it, definitely I recommend watching it. It is insightful. But there's also like a show that I've watched too called Snowfall that John Singleton produced, and he was actually speaking to this as well, and how it was like the CIA was like supporting the civil wars in South America, and to support that war, they had to build up funding, which was coming through the drugs. So that's why drugs was being allowed into Americas and so forth, to support those Civil War efforts. And Ronald Reagan was one of the people that was featured in this documentary on crack. And that "Make America Great Again" was not first said by him, but he was one of the people that said it before Donald said it.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
So yeah, that documentary like had a lot of insightful things in it. So I would definitely recommend that. Um, so I think this is definitely another important question to ask. Do you foresee, excuse me, any police reform happening in the future based on these continued social injustice issues? So do you foresee any police reform happening in the future based on these continued social injustice issues?
I have mixed emotions on that, so I'll let someone else start.
Oh.
I'm still
Okay.
trying to process the question, because it's like, I think when it comes into the reform talk, I know from last year, from what I read, is that there was more of a push of taking the money out and putting it in, in like just putting it in other like places, right? Like putting more money into education, putting more money into affordable housing. I feel like I don't just want to focus on just the police reform. I just think there needs to be an entire reform with everything from police to education to housing, because all of those things are all like connected. And like I feel like just living in Newark, if they were to change that, it doesn't take away the issue with housing being super expensive. It doesn't take away the issue of having healthy foods being attainable. I feel like if we're going to talk about any reforms, we need to talk about everything, because when you think of any just any type of social issues, it's only geared towards crime. But it's also a crime when you don't have a place to live, when you can't afford to have a place to be, when you think about the level or the lack of accessibility to foods, to clean water, to proper education. I feel like as a collective, we need to put a demand on everything that we rightfully deserve, which is a better way of living. And so I feel like if there is going to be any reform with when it comes into the police department, there needs to be additional reform very quickly, followed with education and all of these things, because it's just too many issues going on to just focus only on one thing as the main thing. Because when you don't have housing, that creates so many issues. It's ridiculous. And having worked in the shelter system for a while, you see the outcome of it, right? You see it when, you know, everyone wants people to stop doing drugs, make housing affordable, pay people, right? Just make sure that they have access to different things, to different types of resources. It all trickles down. And I feel like we like to beat around the bush, when in reality, there's so many more issues that's happening. And so I really hope that if we are doing any type of police reform, that we tackle on the other issues that's really plaguing the community.
I have mixed emotions on police reform, because it definitely needs to be reformed big time. There's way too much money that's funneled into police departments in poor neighborhoods. And if some of that money was funneled into other programs, then you wouldn't have the need for the police at the levels that they do in those areas. But then some of those areas are set up because people need to have pensions and people need to have jobs in other areas where they're living the middle class life, right? And you need Black bodies to be able to fill the prison system in order enough for them to be able to have their pensions and everything else. So it's kind of interesting because you're going to need police reform, and I don't think much of it's going to happen anytime soon. But you need a whole lot of other reforms as well. Basically, piggybacking off of what Joy said, you know, housing, education, wealth. I mean, there's so many things. Like, our communities are at such disadvantages when it comes to that. And we need a serious boost because we're struggling. We're struggling big time. And putting more police officers on the police department that have almost like an innate hatred for minority people is not healthy for anyone, you know. But I mean, a lot of people are screaming, defund the police, defund the police. And I mean, you can't just totally defund the police because you still need to have some sort of law and order, right? Some sort of structure. And you can't just have people running around doing whatever the hell it is that they want to do in policing themselves. But at the same time, you need to maybe take the focus off of certain areas where they gravitate to those areas to create problems. So that way you have more of our young youth that's locked up, more of our Black men and women that end up in the prison system, which keeps a whole lot of people in the middle class area employed. So I don't really think there's going to be too much police reform, but there needs to be, along with a whole lot of other reform. But
For me, I think if policemen are held accountable for all, if any unjust killing, it would change things. I know their job is to protect and serve, not to protect, not to be an executioner and become, you know, the jury themselves. So once policemen are held accountable for their actions, things will start changing in the system, and you know, we won't have these issues that we have today. They're getting away with it, and that's why it's going to continue. But they have to be held, in my opinion, just have to be held accountable for what they do when they take an unjust life. If it was completely unjust, and you have tape, you know, hence Breonna Taylor, you know, those cops should have been fired, and you know, and that would set precedent for other cops. You know, when you're gonna, you know, arrest or take somebody into custody, you'll think twice before you take a life, before you pull that trigger. You know, is it worth me not having my job? You know, they'll have their day in court. So, you know, as long as the injustice is still there will be no reform, in my opinion. Nothing will change.
I mean, we see what happened at the Capitol, right? So how many of those people are really being held accountable, and how are they being held accountable? So if you can have this type of insurrection, terrorism at the levels that we had it at on January 6th, then there's not much hope for the police departments, because a lot of these people that were present are police officers and
giving them pats on the back. They were there, you know, so
they have to be just quickly
they get fired, right? They get fired, and what do? They go 2 towns over.
Hold on, Sherrice. Tashante, just turn your camera.
Am I?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
you know
Sorry.
what? Technical
They go 2 towns over and they get hired again by another police department. So
Thank
they
you.
don't.
Go ahead.
There's no real punishment for them. So until they're actually truly held accountable and there's like real punishment and
yeah,
consequences, it,
exactly.
things are not going to change within the police
Exactly.
department. I mean, there's so
Unfortunately.
much racism and hate that's present there that it's going to take, like, you got to overhaul America pretty, pretty much on a whole lot of fronts, because we're not doing good as a country. Not at all.
Not at all.
Not on the world stage, that's for certain.
I
So,
agree, and I had a technical difficulty, and I don't know if this was mentioned while I glitched out. I um I do see a reform as far as like the police are concerned, but I think it's going to take a very long time because I think there are a lot of people on the inside that are aiding and abetting just some of the injustices that the police are allowed to carry out. The police brutality. You just mentioned what happened at the Capitol. There were police officers letting them in. Like it's insane. So I think that a lot of cleanup needs to be done before that reform happens. People in the FBI, people in the KKK, and this is like they have like a global network of people supporting white supremacy. So that
yeah,
needs to be rooted out.
exactly.
And that's how it was built, right? That isn't that how, like, if we go back into our history, that's pretty much how, like, cops and, like, they stemmed from the overseers. And then I forgot what they were called after they were overseers, and then the next they're police officers. And so that whole mindset has just been going and going and going. And as long as this country still keeps to make, they still decide to make billions of dollars off of black and brown bodies, you're not going to see too many changes, because it's a business. And we live in a capitalistic society where a dollar is much more important than a life.
It's going to take somebody to break down the systemic racism. Someone's going to have to say, this is not right. I don't know if Biden can start that trend. I'm
No.
hopeful that he can, because, he made it very clear he will not accept or tolerate certain behaviors in his office. You will be fired on the spot. So if he can carry out those words and he can stand behind it, we can slowly break down systemic racism, in my opinion. So if he stands behind his truth, I feel that how it may not happen in our lifetime, we may not see it, but hopefully in our kids and our grandkids' generation, it will happen. Where once those walls start breaking down, and people start, viewing our lives that it matters, and people are held accountable for what they do unjustly, then I'm hopeful that things can change and will change.
I think to quickly add on that, I think that what's happening now in the Black community, which is good, is that like while we're waiting, we're building our own thing, right? Having our own businesses where we can hopefully hire people. We want to have our own apartment buildings where we're able to rent out to people that look like us. Because when you think about in history, oh my gosh, what was it when they burned down the entire town because they were doing well? Oh my gosh, somebody help me out. I forgot, but I think you guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's it was called the Black Wall Street in Georgia, back in 1800. Exactly. They burned that shit down. So it's
but again, like it actually shows that there are people, and I remember a couple years ago, somebody that was like, no, we need this separation. And I used to be like, no, we need to be together, and we do. But I think what's happening now as a community is like, listen, while we're waiting, because we know we're going to be waiting for a while, we need to start to build things for ourselves, right? Like when we talk about wealth, I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday, and he works in finance, and he's really good at what he does. He's Black. And he was saying that the amount of wealth, not money. Like, I think we often think if we have a lot of money in our account that we're wealthy, and that's not the case. He was like, the amount of wealth that a lot of white people have, he says, it is mind-blowing. He was like, not even a percentage of that, as he has Black clients, like he rarely does. He was like, the amount of wealth that they have, that they're able to pass from generation to generation, right? And so, and like, this is something that I've been hearing very frequently on, is that, and it is that like, we make other people rich, right? I remember I was listening to someone have a conversation on Clubhouse, and then I saw this on Instagram, that, you know, when we're buying a lot of these name like brand stuff, where we are literally investing in their like family, you know, in the future to come, and we don't have nothing to show for it. And so when it comes down to, even with Biden being in office, I mean, I'm not a fan of Trump. I'm not. I when it comes to with politicians, I don't trust them, to be quite honest. But I feel like this is not the time for Blacks to just be like, oh, he's in office, let me chill, let me relax. Yep, he hired Black people, he hired people that looks different than him, I'm gonna chill out. No, I think now is the time that we have to really begin to build, educate, and invest, and create new opportunities. Because especially when it comes down to making the change, when it comes into like the police reform, we all agree that it's not happening anytime soon. And so really, just in the interim, like, we have to create something for ourselves that can be passed down from generation to generation to generation, to really create change. And I think it really starts with our young people, with the words we speak into them, with the kind of education and schooling. Because when you think of corporate America and you look at certain people who are in certain positions, they are literally raised to actually be a CEO. They are like, it is one of those things that they're shaped in, yeah, like they are literally molded into those roles. And so for us to see any type of reform in like the other aspects of life, I really think it's about the quality and how we even define wealth too, because it we don't have it. Like when you look at the Jews, like they own everything, right? And so I feel like while we wait, it's like we have to be very mindful of exactly like, what are we doing in that like waiting period.
Teaching our kids to invest, teaching them how to invest. You know, if you have $1, I'm not blocked again. Oh, if you have $1, don't spend the whole thing. You know, spend maybe a quarter of it, invest another quarter, and bank the 50 cents. You know, so it's our it's important. It's extremely important for us to teach our kids, you know, tools to be successful mentally. Like you said, wealth is not always about money. It's, you know, a mental wealth, you know, stability, and just knowing that how many, unfortunately, how many kids in our community, in our culture, understands stocks and investing. You know, not too many. I know I didn't. It's as an adult I learned about it, but our youth today don't know anything about that. So it's very important that we educate our children, you know, and give them the tools that we didn't have growing up, and which is start saving, start investing, and building your mental wealth as far as your financial wealth, and mold them to be CEOs, and groom them to be CEOs, groom them to be successful, groom them to be the next Amanda, where they're performing, you know, reciting a beautiful poem in front of the next female president down the line, you know. So we got to mold our kids to be very successful, and tell them that how they too can do whatever they set their minds to be. So wealth comes in different forms, you know, like you said, not just money, but education. But it's our job to teach that and enforce that and keep our kids in a straight path. And, you know, they're gonna divert, but it's our job to put them back on, and keep them going forward. And, you know, and we can have doctors in our families too, and lawyers in our families too, you know. And it's all about grooming our kids to, like you said, to do right and be, you know, and be very successful.
Thank you all. I think we had another good, very informative conversation. Um, as always, if there's anything you would like to plug, besides being the head of household, Reese, but if there's anything
I'm with
else
these streets.
that you would like to plug, definitely feel free to take this time to like plug anything positive, productive you're working on, or something you just want to like refer people to. We already bought Shanika and Joyce books, so we have supported Black business. But nevertheless, if there's any other things that you like want to plug or bring up, feel free to take this time to do that now.
I want to plug something.
Okay. Okay.
Just to your viewers, Rashim, I just want to let them know that I do have a web series, should be coming out soon. It's a comedy. It's about a Black-owned business. So my goal when this web series does come out is to make people laugh, but also shine a light on how difficult it is to be Black and own your own business. So
Nice.
fingers crossed. Oh, and I'm sorry, it's called Media Alert. And if you guys can follow me on Media Alert series on Instagram, and on Facebook it's just Media Alert. So
Nice. Thank you.
thank you.
Anything else? All right. Living our life like it's golden. In the words of Jill Scott. I was actually looking for Angela Davis quote that I thought might be good to end this two-part episode on. Um, and I found one. Um,
Make it good.
I know, right?
A whole lot of Black girl magic.
But it doesn't technically speak to Black girl magic. But I think it speaks to no, in a way, I guess it does because it's like she's a representation of that, you know, through her own route and being an activist, a civil activist, and things of that nature. Um, but I do feel that it's a good quote, and it says to understand how any society functions, you must understand the relationship between men and the woman. So that was one of her quotes. Um, and of course, that's layered.
Yes.
But I think for the Black man and the Black woman, it is important for them to grow in their understanding of one another. You know, because of course there was the miseducation, and then now is the bounce back. So like some people are still miseducated, and are struggling to bounce back. But those of us who have like gained in more consciousness and awareness, which is what I felt we had the perfect example of how we can do that by seeing the opposite of that with the Trump administration and what Trump had did. So my optimism for what's happening now with him leaving office is based around the fact that more people are conscious to just the actual truth of what it is. There's still racist mother effers in this world, and it's a trickle down effect in terms of how the systems have been misappropriately used for years. And you see why there's like these various levels of social injustice, from just how people were poorly treated during the pandemic, that's still happening, you know, where you have so many people, who are hesitant to even take this vaccine, and predominantly it might be African Americans, how there's I believe a new variant that's happening in South Africa, which is like, oh yeah, the hotbed of everything. You want to make sure you got all your experiments happening out there, because they can't have the resources that they got out there and be able to thrive. So we got to keep trying to infiltrate them with some type of disease or something, to kind of like cause them to actually lead to more dysfunction and not being able to appropriately build out and build on those resources, so it can probably turn into a Wakanda, which is what is probably which is what it's probably supposed to be, but nevertheless, I just felt like where things are right now, we are hopefully in a more conscious place to recognize things, call people out on their BS, and hopefully, start building a trend of more reform, period. So, with that being said, we gotta stay curious.
The bright future.
Stay woke.
Yep.
Stay woke. Mm-hmm.
So thank you all once again for your time. I'm going to definitely work to get this episode up this week because this will be my episode for the month. So I got to make sure I stay in tune with making sure I drop one every month. So definitely appreciate you all taking the time out and taking the time out of your Saturdays. And I hope you can enjoy the rest of your weekend as much as you can. And I'll be in touch.
All right. One love.
One love.
Take care, ladies.
Take care.
Bye. Take care.